Previously on Wanga Connect.
There was so much accusation against me. I remember looking at my mother and asking her, "Is that how you raised me?"
Wanga Connect with Joy Wambui wa Kariuki.
Hi. Welcome to Wanga Connect. On this beautiful Wednesday afternoon, we are once again hosted by Olaro, which is in the outskirts of Nairobi, Magadi Road, in Rongai. And if you have not experienced Olaro, I don't know what you're waiting for. So in this season, we have been talking about forgiveness. We have been talking about our experiences with forgiveness from real stories. These are real people who have gone through real events in their lives. And today, I bring you the story of Joy Wambui wa Kariuki. That is me on Wanga Connect. Please don't forget to subscribe to this channel. If you want to continue having more of these stories, just hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. So today we continue on Joy Wambui's Kariuki's story on the progression. I say bits and bits of here and there about how it is. You know, you're told that for a person who has never had an experience, there's only so much you can take from them. And I come with you with experiences of offenses that I have been receptive of. But what was my role? And this season, or in this episode, I want to engage to you with steps on how you can be able to receive forgiveness. And most especially, there's a part that we do not address. How is it that whatever it is, the choices that you make, how have those choices affected the people in your life? And how do you rise above this offense? How do you rise above to be able to receive the forgiveness and also extend this forgiveness to other people? And I want to start with a quote by Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King said that he who is unable to forgive is incapable of love. And I started to you with a story on my love journey. My journey into love was very eventful in the first years. And what I love about the snippets of this love story is that I have most of the good memories, because the bad memories, I have forgotten them. And I was intentional about forgetting them, because every time I defended the space that I was in, it meant that I have not been able to let go of this offense. And like I said, when this has been separated from us, this is something that has been dismissed from your profile. And if this has been dismissed from your profile, you should be able to dismiss it also from the profiles of those that you are extending this forgiveness over. Because you see, when it is in your mandate to punish, but you choose not to punish the person who has offended you, but you choose to let go, basically what you have done is you have done yourself a favor, and you have also done the person that has offended you a very, very great favor. So as we are looking at this offense and the stages of offense, is what we are looking at. The first stage is you need to acknowledge. You need to acknowledge that you have been hurt. I remember in the times of acknowledging the hurt, I had to come to face with what had brought the doors of what was happening in my life. And I had to address this one-on-one. Every one of us has a story. Every one of us has a place that we have come from. And that is why in this segment that I've done, I think this is a third or so, I don't know. And in this particular one is where you're looking at you hosting your own show. I didn't know how difficult it is for you to be on the other side where you're receiving it. I've always been the one asking the questions and allowing people to tell their stories. But this time I'm giving my story. You could have snippets of it, but it's still a story. So when you acknowledge the offense, I had to sit back and acknowledge that I had been offended. I had to sit back and acknowledge that offense had come to me, and I had to find a way on how I was going to rise above this offense. Was I going to carry the offense and repackage it? No. I had to let go of this offense. And I looked back, and I remember sitting down with my folks. I went back to my mother and I said, "Mom, this and this happened. and it offended me because I wanted the past gone and I wanted to start a new chapter in my life. See, forgiveness offers you the freedom that you're looking for. And I remember addressing some of the things, and my mother did not know what had happened to her child. And that was my first journey. See, I did not start addressing it with my husband. I started addressing it with my parents. And I started talking about how the entry had come in. But I also needed to forgive myself. Remember, in this stage where I have been married, it's a stage where I'm looking at the solution to the pain being alcohol. And now I have added, like I told you, there was also weed involved, and I was also a very heavy smoker. There's some things that I'm never proud of. And those are some of the events in my life that I was never proud of. The events where you have to deplete your family's finances simply because you're trying to tag on the events of your life. You're trying to tag on all the people that have offended you into your future. And remember, I had also not dealt with the rejection that I felt in each and every place. One of the things that I dished out to the people that I found is that you had a certain opinion of me, and I gave you that. I didn't feel like it was something that I needed to overlook, but I wanted to validate the offense more than I wanted to validate myself. God had already validated me. And like I said, mercy precedes forgiveness. So when I started going through these phases and I am acknowledging that I have been offended, it started becoming easier and easier. All this time, I had not been born again. So I reached a point where I did not know what it's like to be sober. I reached a point where I would ask people, and this was a very funny phase of my life, where I would ask people how it is like to become sober. Anybody who tells stories on how it is that they were so fresh, I'll be like, how does it feel? And that's how I would be like, that's how I'm feeling. So I would want to try and enter in their shoes so that I can start feeling that's the way it was. Rocking into bars became the norm of the day, to a point where even you're losing your business. I was in business, but I was losing every single day because I had to service this addiction. I had to feed this monster. And every time this monster took a bit of me, I had to feed some more into this monster. I was not acknowledging defeat. I was not acknowledging the fear. But at this time, I had to face it head on. How did I rise above it? One was acknowledging that I had been offended. I had to acknowledge that there was an offender. I had to acknowledge there was an offense. And I had to acknowledge there was a way out of the offense. And once I was able to do this acknowledgement, then my journey into healing, forgiveness, and relief and freedom started developing. I want to tell you one thing, that forgiveness is not instinctive. This is a progressive journey. You walk into it, there's no looking back. It's very intentional. You have to decide that I need this freedom that forgiveness is offering me. And nobody can do that for you. Only you can be able to be rid of the things that make you offended. The other thing you need to do is that you need to consider how this pain has affected you. And not only affecting you as a person, but also affecting the people in your life. When I was married, these young years of marriage, there was a child involved. And my son was a receiver of the bile. He was a receiver of the venom that both of us, we inflicted pain on this child, knowingly or unknowingly. So we had to consider for ourselves. Remember, in this segment, I'm doing for you the steps into your forgiveness. And if you realize, I'm not addressing the offense anymore, because a lot of us want to hear the packaging of the story on how it is that it was, so that you can go to, oh, really? What I'm glad about is, I'm glad that the Lord has thrown this into the sea of forgiveness, and that is why it is so easy. So you need to consider, as a person that has been offended, as an addict, and this particular one, I'd want to address everyone that is struggling with addiction. Whatever kind of addiction that you're in, remember, drug abuse is not the only addiction there is. We have so many ways of abusing substance. And there are others who are also addicted to pornography. That's visual, it's bad, and it's depleting a lot of values in relationships and in marriage, and also into the society and the church also. And you need to sit down and ask yourself, consider how this engagement that you're in, how this disease is affecting the people in your life, and what can you do to change it. Remember, this vehicle that you boarded, it has a gate pass, and the gate pass has an entry mode and an exit mode. And in the same way you got out, you can still find your way out of the exit, and also be able to get everybody else that you got into this offense, how you can get them out. Because this freedom that forgiveness offers you is a choice. And you can take on the ticket and board your way in, or also exit out of it. So we started considering, my child was emotionally abused. If the moment would expose him to this torture, which was emotional, physical, and all that, and it was draining us even physically and emotionally, I didn't look like I do now. I was sick because it's a disease. I was mentally ill. I was taking antidepressants. And all I wanted is to just sleep and not wake up. So what did that mean? Is that I was not able to attend to my child. So we need to consider, in the areas of forgiveness, you need to consider, how is this affecting the people around me? And you need to make a choice, how it is that you need to get out of that offense. The other thing, the third step, is you need to accept. The most beautiful thing I ever did for myself is to accept. First, I had been offended. Number two, I had to accept that there was an offense that was prevailing. And I had a choice to engage with the gates that called for my freedom. Remember how the Lord has said that I will give your enemy, I'll give to your children the gates to your enemies. I speak from a place of healing. I speak as a person that has been healed. And that is why I'm able to identify. I look at people who are shaming people who are sick. And I wonder, do you really understand what these people are going through? Some of them are fighting to get out of whatever it is. Not only was I suffering mentally, but I was also obese. I was 100 and something, I think 115 kilos. Because all I wanted is to feed this demon that was inside. And I didn't know how sick I was. So you can imagine how bad it was. So I had to accept. I had to accept that I was sick. And I had to accept the grace that was being extended to me. Mercy precedes forgiveness. Peter talks about for us to be always, at all time, extending charity, fervent charity. We are not to extend it once in a time or occasionally, but also to do it consistently and fervently, and giving all of it that you can be able to give. Acceptance is your first stage of healing. I know there are other steps that I have taken you through, but accepting that this is what is going on in your life, and that is where most of us are in. We are in denial. We are in denial that our society needs healing. And that is why you find, I've seen a lot of people blogging about how terrible marriage is. We see a lot of views when people are talking about the terrible vices that are in relationships. But what about those that have been able to come out alive? What about the statistics of the people that stayed afloat? When you watch the Titanic, You see the production now leaving the ship and leaving the sequence and following this person that is walking out of the ship and being healed and having to be able to recover. At least there's always someone who comes out of the storm and gives a story about how the storm is. And those of us that have been able to come out of the storms, we are giving stories, but not how the ship fell, not how terrible the storm was. But we are giving stories about how we got out of it alive, and now we have been able to progress that. So once you have been able to accept, you're also able to accept the forgiveness that the society will give you. It was not a very easy place, asking for my own child for forgiveness, for putting him through what he did. He saw his mother with a black eye. We physically abused one another. Emotionally, we abused one another. Spiritually, we did. Every form of abuse, we did. And who was the recipient of that shrewd way that we lived? Our child. The society is bleeding because there are issues that are not being addressed. And I'm here to remind you that there is grace that is available to each and every one of us. And we need to be receptive of that grace. And in this place of acceptance, this is a place where you need to accept that you fell into the trap of unforgiveness and lack of it. And there were vices that were born after that. And you also need to accept that you have been forgiven. A lot of us have refused to jump ship because we have not been receptive of this forgiveness. It's available, but we have never forgiven ourselves. I remember during that time, in 2000 and this time when I'm still in the process of forgiveness, in 2009, I had a baby, my second-born son. And I was in a lot of pain. I was not able to take care of my child as I should have. And what happened? I lost that boy. I lost my son, and when I woke up in the morning and I was told by the doctors that my son was no more, I found it very hard to forgive myself. I found it very hard to let go that I had dragged him into a mess that he didn't need to be in. And I found myself fighting for so long, trying to forgive myself for not taking care of my own child as I should have. I blamed myself. But one time I woke up and I saw that I was not doing myself any favor. The one that was living still needed a mom. Yet I was burying myself and wallowing in self-pity. Unforgiveness channels you into a self-pity zone that you don't need in this life. You need to consider, and I insist on this, you need to consider what your unforgiveness is doing to the people that are around you. Jesus has kept talking about forgive your neighbor. He says forgive 70 times 70. When Peter asked how long and how many times are we supposed to forgive? Jesus answers him by himself. He doesn't tell him that this is how many times. That one, it's not giving a count. It's saying that you need to forgive 70 times 70 times. That means there should be no count. Because when you forgive 70 times 70, you erase the former, and now you engage in a newness. So basically, and you have dismissed the last count. So there's basically no count to how many times that you can consider forgiving others and consider the freedom that forgiveness gives you. Loss. You lose yourself. You lose your ego. You lose things around you. Anytime you decide to hold on, you lose even your entity. You lose your values. You lose your purpose. You end up losing. And most of the things that we are finding in the society right now is because we have decided to hold on to that which you need to have lost a long time ago. The reason why most of us do not have a recount of these zones is because we decided to let go of them. The other thing you need to determine whether or not you will forgive. After you have considered, now determine. Not only determining whether you need to forgive, but I will take you into this space. Be determined to actually let go of these people that have offended you. Be determined that by hook or crook, you are going to be away from this offense. Be determined that you're not going to continue with this path of unforgiveness because it's not doing you any good. Growing up in a season where this and this is happening, and then there are all these other prevailing conditions that you receive along the way where you don't feel like you need to be somebody, then you enter into this and you decide, I'm going to be determined that I'm going to rise above this. I think that is one of the greatest favors that any person can do for themselves. Don't determine the noise that is around you. Don't determine the circumstances that you need. Don't determine the avenues that you're going to use. Be determined that whatever it is that pulses, you need to get out of it. The other thing is that you need to repair. We need to repair the broken bridges. When you are carrying on offense, one of the things that you realize, you burn a lot of bridges. I burnt a lot of bridges. When I was so busy repackaging my offenses, and every season there was a new repackage, there was a rebranding of the product that I carried and the product that I had become, the bitterness that I had. I repackaged, people repackage bitterness. I've seen that for myself. I burnt a lot of bridges. I spoke things I never should have spoken. I became abusive even without knowing it. As I was walking around entitled to the offense, as I was going around regrouping myself and seeing how it is that I was going to engage with the next offense, I burnt bridges. There's some work that is involved when you start walking the journey of unforgiveness. But when you decide that you're going to walk into the journey, remember I said this other one is walking in the journey, but now you're walking into the journey of forgiveness. There is one thing that you need to do, is you need to start repairing. While you may not go back and start fixing all the mess, you can now become something new. You can start offering solutions like what Wanga Connect is doing right now. We are connecting on the newness that we have received and the newness that we have decided, that we are no longer going to put on the garment of unforgiveness and the garments of anger and that garment of recklessness that we choose on. Right now we are connecting on the newness that we have received. And don't be shocked if you can no longer remember some of those offenses. When God fixes you, it is permanent. It completely goes. You can only relate with it. You can only look back and say, oh, that actually happened to me. But guess what? I got out of it. Then when you start repairing those burnt bridges, you start seeing God even elevating the people that you had affected negatively. Then you start seeing a society that is being healed. Today I look back at a family that has been healed because of the repair that is happening. And this is not something that happens one day. It's a progressive framework. It's something that has to come in and it goes becoming new and newer every morning. And that's why the Lord says that His mercy is new every single morning. The other thing is learn. Learn from the mistakes that you made. Let those things that happen to you in your foolish school of thought, let it not be things that you start engaging with and deciding, now you're going to start fixing the people through the mistakes and you start talking to them out of the bitterness. Don't engage with their eyes. If you're still in pain, don't start engaging with conversations that are not going to fix anything. Because when you talk, you're going to talk out of oppression. You're going to talk out of the bitterness that you're in. But when you become whole, now you enter into a place where you start talking from the mountaintop. You do not address the offense. And that is why now you have power over that which took you down in the first place. When you are in that place where you're learning, now you learn from a different framework and you're able now to elevate others to the level that you're on. But when you are still down there, I love this story about Elijah. Elijah went complaining to the Lord about how he had been offended and how much he felt like he was the only one in 1 Kings 19. And I love what the Lord did to him. The Lord did not start addressing his offense and telling him, oh, Jezebel is such a bad woman. How could she do this to you? That's not what happened. What he did is he told him, go out. And when he told him, go out, he was basically telling him, get out of that mess that you have created for yourself. Don't address through the limited values that you have. And he told him, get out and go to the mountain top. Go on top of the mountain. So, and finally, now become action oriented. You've already gone through the steps. You have acknowledged what's going on. You have already been determined that it's going to work out, whether the system likes it or not. Now be action oriented. Forgive. You need to let go of this offense. Drop it like it's hot. This is a place that gives you the most liberating feeling. It helps you understand that whatever you have received, only does it give you a favor, but also to the people that are receiving this forgiveness. It makes you enter into a phase of freedom, where freedom is so beautiful that you're no longer bound. And in the next episode, we'll be looking at more stories. We'll be looking at people who have been liberated as they connect on Wanga, connecting on newness, because of what God has already done in their lives, and they have been receptive of that forgiveness. So today I challenge you. What are you holding on to? Would you let it go today? I have been your host, Joy Wambui, Kariuki, and this is Wanga Connect. And don't forget to subscribe, because there are more stories coming up. Wanga Connect is about reformative stories. It's about stories that inform, where we don't dwell much on the offense, but we dwell a lot on the beauty, that forgiveness, and every kind of freedom, whatever it offers to you. We dwell on that because we want to invite you on the platform of joy, eternal life, the platform where you have been receiving the greatness that God has. God has so much love to give. Mercy precedes forgiveness.
Thank you for watching. Catch new episodes every Wednesday. Hit the subscribe button and share with your friends so that this content can help someone else.